An unknown man lay bare-chested on the old kitchen table, one that had been the center of my family's life for generations, welcoming newborns, birthdays, family holidays, weddings, christenings, and wakes, when we'd mourn someone who would pass into the next life and go join our Heavenly Father. Countless conversations took place here. It was marked from use with pencils, with stick figures of childhood drawings, knife marks, and all the attempts to repair the damage. A white wooden table that had belonged to my great-grandmother and had been repainted many times. The unknown let out a demented wail, and the men of my family bound him to the table with ropes to prevent his escape. They shooed me off to bed, knowing this was not a sight for innocent eyes, taking me by the hand and leading me upstairs, only for me to creep back down to hide by the doorframe. A witness. Dusk had passed with the setting sun, and all the adults of my family all stood around the man with lowered heads and frowning faces of concern, occasionally leaning close to murmur to each other. The kitchen was at the back of the house, looking out at the farmland that surrounded the home. There was a live rabbit in a cage on the tile floor. I had asked if it was going to be our pet, only to be shooed to bed with the other children, all to be waved away after dinner. The silence was uncanny, their twitching and shuffling. Each of them were nervous. I noticed someone standing at the back door through the glass window. Their shadow lingered, and his face was concealed with the brim of his wide hat. 3 loud knocks were cast. Only my grandmother moved to allow him entry inside. The bell on the handle jingled, and it sent an involuntary shudder through their bodies. He walked inside, towering over the rest of my family members, including the men. They all stepped away from the bound man, giving him space, and without looking he placed his briefcase on the kitchen counter behind him. He flicked both the clasps to open it, inhaling a powder in the palm of his hand, while my grandmother gave him a brief, dirty look. I couldn't see inside to view the contents, rubbing the sleep from my eyes with the flat of my hands, but it was no use. The stocky frame of my uncle stood in front of me, and after shifting quietly, I was able to get a better view. The stranger took off his hat, placed it beside the suitcase, and leaned down. The bound man pulled on the ropes and tried to sit up, jerking his legs. He was about to speak when my father thrust a folded belt inside his mouth. His cold, stoic face was so alien. How could this be my family? Each member took hold of a limb to keep them in place. The light bulb above flickered 3 times, causing them all to look up with a loud gasp.
"Pay no attention,"
he growled, running a finger down the bound man's bare torso, and flicked around his chest with a grimy fingernail. I couldn't see from this angle. The bound man's face was hidden by the standing figures, but what I could see was a tightly balled fist, straining with the tendons upright and stretched, while a guttural grumbling came from within. Every urge told me to flee, but I stared with wide-eyed curiosity, my hand holding onto the doorframe.
"Do you know the man's name?"
Silence.
"Do you know the man's name?"
The demand cut the air, and all my family shook their heads feebly. Fish out of water, dealing with a being they'd heard of only in whispered folk tales to avoid suspicion. The stranger exhaled yet remained determined.
"Then I will make do."
His hands rested on either side of the man's chest, and the light bulb above burst, sending shattered glass down on us. Yet none fled. They remained in a circle, ready to assist yet unable to. Nightfall approached earlier than the norm. Silently cupboards were opened. White candles were brought out, and a match lit, creating light, with a faint smoke rising. The gentle smell of beeswax filled the air while they burned, and the foul aroma of urine soon added to the mixture. The stranger stared down into the bound man's eyes, who was cackling wildly. Inhuman. Unholy. His hands clenched and unclenched, murmuring under his breath.
This man has committed many sins during the course of his life.
What kind? Asked my mother.
Never you mind.
The bound man cackled now, boasting of his crimes against the helpless and vulnerable, of those to the newborn and those on the brink of death. He boasted of stealing their funds, breaking families, seizing innocence, and crushing the broken. A series of concerned mutterings fell around the room, hushed, and their concerns had been realized. They had brought a monster inside their home, protecting them from the cold. Should they throw a guest outside, refuse all the guest rights, even if they were rarely spoken of these days?
We may still save the man's soul. Hold him steady.
The voice etched with authority, and my family kept holding the guest down. My stomach growled when the oven was opened, and a freshly fragrant loaf of bread was removed, placed on the counter, and I licked my lips. It smelled delicious. I figured we'd eat it after the man was dealt with, but was he even worth saving?
Quick, missus, place the loaf on his chest. We need to draw it out.
My mother was confused, holding the hot loaf in her cooking mitts while the steam rose from it still. It was hot and would surely burn him. She paused, stared, and unsure at the stranger's odd request.
Now, I can't control him much longer.
She did so, and the bound man screamed. His skin burned, and we thought the stranger was mad, insane. His kind had a reputation for being so. Suddenly they shrieked loudly, nearly releasing him when they saw black tendrils coursing up through the bread, infecting it with the sins he was responsible for. Soon the aroma faded. A wretched foul smell took over, and eyes watered, noses ran, and soon they gagged with the odor.
I'll rid you of your sins. Draw them out. Don't fight me.
He demanded, while the man wept, screeching and offering depraved threats. The captive's joints cracked while he pulled. His wrists, elbows, and shoulders were in different positions, while his legs curled up like a bird's. A grunting, choking sound emitted loudly. Words ceased, and all he reminded me of was a crazed beast. How the loaf managed to stay on was a miracle. A smoky haze filled the air while the candles flickered vigorously. The flames twisted, and the room felt full with the unseen.
In the name of God, I take your sins into my flesh.
His right hand reached out, tore a piece of loaf off, and bit into it. While he did so, the left remained firmly planted on the man's forehead, fingers pressing in. I caught a glimpse of the man's face. His eyeballs bulged out of his skull, with twin blood streams trickling down his cheeks. The stranger gagged, hunched over and twisting while his jaw pulled unnaturally, swallowing each sordid mouthful, and his jaw distorted while he took each bite. The bread was thick and sinewy, rather than soft and fluffy, the way it should have been.
Do not let him go.
Clutching tight with both hands, having to prevent himself from vomiting. near choking on the foul contents and swallowing while his body protested. My mother rested her back on the wall, her face drawn in and exhaling deeply, gently sobbing while her body shook with increasing ferocity. My grandmother was emptying the contents of her stomach into the sink, and the rest had fallen away, each laying down on the tiles. My father had passed out, and uncles and cousins lay, alternating between covering their eyes and then their ears. The stranger's words fell on deaf ears while he rushed to fill his overstuffed mouth. I was drawn to it. None noticed me, only when I stood beside the table, when the guest's body fell limp, bruised and beaten. A long, aching breath expired from his mouth, and he reached his demise. The flesh broken, yet his soul was now saved. The stranger's arms clung to the table, with a pool of drool down his beardless chin. His mouth ajar, and I saw 2 gold teeth. Otherwise, they were mostly intact. Water dribbled from his chin, and now he barely managed to cling on to the table. He had won. An uncomfortable stillness lingered in the air. The kitchen was chill, without any warmth. Glancing back the way I had come, and back again. Hello? A twisting in my stomach warned me. Hello? Are you all right? I reached for the stranger's sleeve. Even my family felt strange, somehow tainted by what they had witnessed. I tugged it, lightly and a second time, insisting that he wake up. Suddenly and sharply, he clasped my hand, squeezing it tight, twisting it, causing me to whimper. His eyes, unnaturally dark, stared at me, boring into mine. It wasn't the man who entered who leered at me now, languidly turning his head to view me. His tongue ran across his teeth, and while innocent, I knew what he was after. I should have called out. My family were all there.
Girl, run.
The stranger's voice returned, barely managing to keep control. He slid out a knife from his boot and held the sharp end along his own throat to keep him under control. He smiled. His eyes cleared to a warm brown before the inhabitant seized control and blackness covered his eyes. It never spoke to me. Whether it was beyond speech or human understanding, I do not know. I stepped back, tripping over the outstretched leg of my uncle and falling on the ground, crawling backward, sliding along, and the room had only grown dark. Within a minute, the stranger's body was on top of me, firm hands holding me down to prevent my escape, his large frame crushing mine beneath him. All my attempts to scream failed with only a choking sob. He lifted my dress. I saw the sin personified without the man, and staring into the darkness, I saw the stranger screaming in rage, ripping to regain control. Within moments, it ended. My grandfather had come back, and the old workhorse, strong from a lifetime of working in the fields, lifted him up, his grey beard on his weathered face, his lips a grim line of determination. Cold, methodical, the same way he was when he slaughtered the sheep for food. The stranger's body slammed on the table, and the stranger's inhabitant laughed, aiming to stab my grandfather in the shoulder. They rocked back and forth. With a grunt, my grandfather's cheek was slit, with red blood trickling down, until my grandfather twisted the possessed stranger's hand and plunged the knife into his stomach. The stranger winced, then smirked, clearly happy, and burst into laughter. He raised his hands to the heavens, mocking the good Lord above, and tapped his fingers on the dead man's cheeks. The guest's body jumped and jerked, jolting with a renewed, unholy life returning to him. The blood sizzled on the knife, causing my grandfather to drop it, instinctively crossing himself in genuine fear.
Begone, beast. I cast you down.
The stranger took the knife, used it to slice his shirt open to reveal a twisted, burnt sigil in his flesh, right up to his collarbones and down to finish right above his groin. A series of circles and triangles with writing I didn't recognize. There was no mistaking the deep wound. It would be fatal in time. The rabbit sat behind us in a cage, wild and caught this morning. I thought it was going into our stew. He reached inside, clutching it by the scruff.
Go forth into an animal where you belong and cease worrying this family.
A roar emitted from his body, clinging to life in a battle of wills. The rabbit squealed and thrashed inside the cage, kicking out until it finally went still, and with it, the stranger's strength finally waned. No longer with the devil keeping his body alive, and fell back. My grandfather immediately rushed forward, guiding the stranger to a chair and flopped down, slumped over and bleeding out. He was a dead man, and soon he would be no more. My normally stoic paternal sire muttered an apology, failing to find the words. He squeezed my grandfather's arm, silencing any apologies, and pointed to the rabbit.
Drown it. Drown it in water before it can leave.
The rabbit lay still, quiet, and stared out with soulless eyes. Too calm, too still, and I could see it brewing inside. My grandfather's hand rested reluctantly on top of the cage, only for the stranger to gesture for him to continue, lifting it up and over the deep country-style sink. It was full to the brim with water and hovered it above. Suddenly the rabbit launched itself at the bars, biting my grandfather's fingers, who yelled and plunged it down into the water. The water splashed wildly, and finally, it was done. Yet the evening was not yet concluded. Dawn approached and it changed. My other family members woke, each shuffling to their feet and assisting the other, now staring in horror at the limp corpse on the table of the drifter. Their mouths hung. Each now had lines marking their faces that hadn't been there prior, and a mess of grey hair. A physical toll with less severity than what now plagued their minds. Addiction to follow, to numb the memories. It was now the stranger finally realized I was there, his hand resting on the wound. He gestured for me to walk toward him, and my mother instinctively grasped my wrist, pulled me close into her apron. Her hand moved through my hair. She didn't know what he wanted, but knew, perhaps, it would alter the course of my life.
There are few of us in the world, and while I forgive you,
he gestured to my grandfather.
One must take my place.
The stranger knew he was ready and willing to sacrifice himself. He had already lived to 70, saw his family grow healthy, and it would spare the younger ones any suffering.
Not you.
I knew before he confirmed it. My fate would be different now.
You.
He beckoned with 2 fingers for me to approach, and I did. My mother sobbed when she released me, turning her face to view the rising sunrise through the kitchen window, unable to watch. I fixated on his warm eyes. Even in death there was a sense of peace. I stood before him in my nightgown.
I'm sorry. You are the one who must bear your grandfather's sins. Killing a sin eater is a crime.
I thought my paternal sire would disagree, yet, instead, he accepted it. I had no idea what a sin eater was, nor their neutral duty.
Do you accept, child?
He asked, not even knowing my name, nodding my head, only for him to shake his in disapproval.
No, you must speak the words.
I accept. The stranger, the Sin Eater's eyes lowered, and he pointed for a candle to be brought forward. Behind me, my family were untying the corpse of my father, hoisting him over his shoulder, and leaving to tend to the remains. I don't know whether he knew what would happen next, or if he needed action to keep his mind from crashing. My grandfather lifted me up on the table, sitting with my legs dangling over the edge, and the top part of my dress loosened to expose my chest. The stranger placed his knife over the flames, heating it up, and up close, I could smell the iron in his blood. "You're hurt." I pointed to the wound, and he ignored me.
This will hurt, but these markings, they will protect you, and I will do another, a new one I learned.
I cast a wary look at the knife.
Look to your kin, child.
Questioning what he meant, my grandfather took my hands in his, and for the first time, I saw tears in his eyes. The first burn was unbearable, and I cried out. He pressed at times and slid it across on others, all while the tears flowed down my cheeks. I don't know why or how I tolerated the pain. When he was done with the final mark that matched his on my chest, he started work on my back, feeling the sharp burning sensation, and finally, that part was done. Next, it was painfully cleaned and wrapped in bandages. I sat motionless on the table, swaying with my body heavy, and still, the rite was not yet complete. I swallowed down a concoction of herbs, nearly spitting it up, and the stranger held my nostrils shut to force me to swallow it. I did so. It burned on the way down. Clutching my stomach, I gave a sour glance to my family, only to realize that there were none of them in the room with me. I hoped this was a dream.
Soon, child, and this part will pass.
He cut his own arm, letting the blood pool, and took it into his mouth. The droplets turned into a trickle. He held my face, pushing inward, and caused my lips to part. At first, I thought he meant to draw me into a kiss, but instead, the blood dribbled down into my mouth. Twisting my head, aiming to spit it out, and his hand concealed my mouth and nose. All I could do was swallow it down. The stranger's eyes locked onto mine. His face was grey now, eyes drawn out, and drained of blood that now flowed onto the floor.
I'm sorry, child. It is up to you to carry this burden. You will do as I have, to eat the sins of the wicked and dispose of the evil. This is the last night you will spend with your family.
He coughed, wheezed, and choked while the death rattle came, until nothing. Unlike the guest, the Sin Eater's body was placed on the kitchen table with respect, his arms folded across his chest, a penny placed on either eye, and flowers placed around his corpse. They searched his pocket for any items to identify him. They found a pocket watch with the initials R and V, $3, and a gold locket with a picture of a young woman inside. We had no idea who this lady was. A Sin Eater had no ties, no family nor friends. He was buried on the property with a wooden cross to mark his gravesite, and the locket was kept safe, hidden inside a jewelry box inside the kitchen cupboard, in case the lady ever came searching for him. None of my siblings nor cousins spoke to me when I was taken up to my bedroom, one I shared with several others. When I looked at them, hoping they'd ask me what happened, they pretended to sleep, and only when I did so could I hear them whispering. Curling up, alone with my wounds stinging, while tears hurt my eyes, the pain served to remind me of what I now was. I woke up late, The smell of breakfast cooking filled my nostrils, and I walked downstairs, plodding along, wondering whether I'd be welcome at the table. It was clean. There was no sign there had been chaos there last night. The floor had no trace of blood, and the table had a stark white tablecloth with several plates ready with a pot in the center. Normally there were 13 plates, but today there were only 12. I stood awkwardly while my family filed in without a word. With no food on offer and their backs turned, I opened the door and sat on the back step, my elbows on my knees and hands resting on my chin. The mist still lingered on the fields down below, with the sheep moving close, all in anticipation of the feed they would receive. I felt something tap my shoulder. I saw a bread roll with egg, bacon, tomato, and cheese, my favorite, and a mug of warm milk. Smiling, taking it in my hands, my mother's eyes were red from crying. She stroked my hair, and I knew she cared still. She choked on what she wanted to tell me, stroked my hair, and suddenly rushed back inside. The door slammed behind her. I had a feeling they watched me through the window. I couldn't understand it. I was still the same person. Why were they behaving differently toward me now? 2 shadows appeared behind me. I didn't look.
It is time to take her. Say your goodbyes. You will never see her again.
The voice was low and grim, without a care. Please, she's just a little girl.
Not anymore.
The voice was hushed, low. I could imagine them standing close together at the kitchen table. I knew instinctively I shouldn't be able to hear this conversation. The blur over my eyes was gone. It was all crisp, and I no longer squinted when I attempted to see the back paddocks. I pondered running, fleeing down to the bottom paddock and then out into the forest, where wild children were said to have run. I could live free, surrounded by woodland creatures, and abandon all the comforts of modern life. But it was not to be. The 2 men offered me their hands, and I didn't bother to glance at my family for guidance. I accepted, following them into their unassuming car and sat in the back seat. We drove until I no longer recognized the roads, and then some, until they reached a small house. The journey was silent. Pulling into the dirt driveway, my stomach grumbled loudly, and I didn't want to annoy them for food. They opened my door, led me inside, and the younger pulled me aside, handing me a baked treat.
You need to tell us when you're hungry. Most of us don't feel it anymore.
He smiled, helped me down from the car seat. After the door opened, a group of 5 sat around a circular kitchen table. They stared at us, clearly perplexed why an unknown child was here. The house was bare, with lanterns and candles from a time before. Old photographs of various matriarchs and patriarchs covered the walls in smaller, circular photo frames. Only a solitary teapot resided on the table, and it didn't feel like home. Certainly not mine. Still, I could smell the alcoholic drinks in the background and on their lips. Stale, likely from the night prior. Some had scarred faces or a missing eye. Their clothing disheveled, and these were people Mother would have insisted I not look at while we passed them on the street.
She is one of us.
He showed them my collarbone and the burn marks that had, strangely healed, now leaving white lines of scar tissue. They hung up their jackets, removing their caps, and I stood awkwardly in the entryway. They went back to their discussions and card games, ignoring me.
Here, hey, you don't need to stand there. Take a seat.
The youngest one pulled out a chair for me to sit on, so I climbed up and waited, fiddling with my fingers on the table. At a closer look, He couldn't have been older than 20. He didn't bother to sit down, preferring to lean with his back against the wall, consuming only a cigarette. They didn't introduce themselves, and quietly, I ate the food given to me, unsure when I'd receive more. Other than watching them play cards, occasionally offering each other a cigarette, and pour themselves another drink, there was nothing else to do. Dusk fell, and 3 of them, including the 2 that took me, opened the door and left. I was taken upstairs, given a space near a window with a warm bed, and curled up to rest. The faint sound of snoring greeted me when I realized I wasn't alone in the room. Someone was sleeping in another bed. A feeling told me only one of the Sin Eaters would return this evening. My dreams were of faceless people. For the first time, I could walk through my dreams, through a space without grass, nor trees, nor any of the buildings I passed. They were empty. The sky was gone. A loud crashing sound alerted me, yanking me from my dream. My eyes shot open. The snoring had stopped, and the semi-open window allowed cool air to enter. Alarm shouting coupled with hushed voices came from downstairs, debating whether I too should go down to see what happened. Heading to the sound with my hair unkempt and arms wrapped around my torso. One of the Sin Eaters, the younger, the one who had been kind to me, had a grave open wound around his throat. It looked like a bear had torn him, leaving nothing but ripped skin and exposed flesh. I knew better than to ask what happened. A loud gargling sound echoed from him, and blood burst from his mouth. I didn't need to look to know the other was deceased. The older of the 2 who claimed me had a deep scratch down the right side of his face, and his shirt was torn. By the aroma, the blood on his clothing was his, the younger, the deceased, and an unknown factor. Human, with an unnatural addition.
Fuck! That fucker keeps coming back! They're getting stronger!
The grizzled veteran didn't bother to look up from his drink. The younger's forehead was cut with a knife, carving in yet another sigil that seemed to hold no impact. I didn't know who it was that terrified him so. The sigil, with harsh lines, was one I had never seen before.
I'm not winning this round. Fuck! It got me.
He nodded, knowing what would come next. Whatever the outcome was, it was unsatisfactory, and a blade was run across his throat, while strange whispered words were spoken over him. The person I had that was closest to a friend was now gone. The elder took pity on me, gave me a plate of nearly stale biscuits and said,
"There, eat. You will see many more deaths before your time is done."
He flopped down on a wooden chair, pouring alcohol over his wounds to clean them, and wrap them in a bandage.
"Don't try to bond with her. She probably won't survive."
A gruff, unimpressed retort came from the sole one who never moved. Not once when the gravely injured one was brought in, and nor when he died, or the rush to prevent the living Sin from escaping. He sat with a clay pipe in hand, the oldest here, a weariness from seeing so many pass on brutally. Still, at that moment, I despised him. The elder didn't challenge him. With the body removed, buried in an unmarked grave, my lessons began. I brushed back my hair and realized we looked like beggars. They took me for a walk through the town, asking me to sense who had sin within them and who was on the verge of death. I asked no questions why they did this. I saw families walking together. A mother sharply jerked her child away from me when we got too close. I didn't know why. I was well liked at school, and when I went to Sunday school, Adults complimented me on my good manners. Walking along, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in a puddle of water by the side of the road. My face was stained with ash and traces of dried blood. My dress was filthy, and I realized my life was now one of a pariah. Peering into the puddle, only for a stranger to step in it, causing it to distort and splash me in the process. No apology, not even a secondary glance.
Get used to it. This is polite compared to what we deal with.
He snorted and coughed up a whelp of phlegm on the ground. He was right. In one town we were driven out by people screaming and cursing us. In others, we weren't even permitted to buy from any of the local stores. Still, when there was a dying family member, they would seek us out to consume their sins.
Don't listen to what it tries to tell you. Focus on eating the sin.
And killing the animal. Sheep, rat, rabbit, family pet. No difference. It needs to go.
Finding now there were those worthy of salvation and those that were not. And while I craved to know more, I knew my questions would go unanswered or mocked. Each night, I thought of my family and wondered what they were doing. Were they all at the kitchen table for the evening meal and talking about their day? Did they miss me the way I missed them? I learnt the new ways. None of us went by names. I was known as the girl or the child, the youngest member. Names were for the living, and we were already close to being dead. I accompanied the two to a farmhouse, walking past neighbors who gawked and pointed at us when we passed. Entering the home, walking up the narrow stairs to a cramped bedroom. This time, there was a teenage girl, still living but close to dead. The stench of death on her. She bled from between her legs after giving birth to an infant, unknown by the rest of her kin. Dried blood and grime from where she had soiled herself. She was grey, her eyes frantic, and a large, heavy iron cross hung above her bed. The mother held a coarse bread, food we would feed our pigs with, and it was taken to be placed on the girl's stomach.
Hold her still. This one shouldn't take too long.
Eat, child, since you're always hungry.
She thrashed and screamed while each bite of the bread was taken. Her sin, if you could call it that, was a measure of survival. She wept with each bite. My stomach rocked in pain and clasping it in my hand.
Don't you dare spit it out.
On and off, his hand would cover my mouth until it was forced down, swallowed and consumed. My eyes blurred while the world span around me. Pins and needles ran up my body, and I wanted to pull my eyes out from my skull. All to give me a moment of reprieve, an act of mercy. They had attempted to find the family cat to be the vessel, only to find that the wily beast had made its escape. A large, slate-grey stray dog from the lanes was plied with food. My hand rested on its grimy fur while it growled and yelped, twisting while being held, and finally, the sin was out of the girl, and she passed away, peacefully. My stomach was on fire. Memories and faces, none were mine. Pain. The family offered prayers, yet we had no time. The dog, now possessed, sprang up on its haunches and bit directly into the elder's arm, instantly locating the weak spot and crushing bone. It then leapt out from the window, breaking the glass and fleeing into the night. The first time this occurred. We trailed behind it. I could smell the blood and gore before I saw it. The possessed sin's first victim and not the last. It fled into the forest, and rumors of people being murdered meant we had to flee. It followed us. Whenever we stopped to rest, it would find us. And the people, those we were sworn to help, they would hunt us down and allow the sin to fester in their dead. And that was the cost of my grandfather's sin. I hope you enjoy this story written by yours truly, Lady Spookaria. If you have any feedback, please leave it in the comment section down below. I would love to thank my amazing guests who submitted their vocal talents. Vidith22, beat it! Nightmares Nightly, Sharon's Tales, and Debak the Keeper, who also helped me out with some intro stingers, so ooh, fancy. If you enjoy their contribution, please check them out and subscribe. Also, if you would like additional content, consider becoming a channel member or Patreon supporter. Look at all these amazing people. Thank you so much. Join their ranks. Want more? Check out the playlist or my social media down below. I also have a gaming channel that I stream on regularly, so subscribe. Stay safe, my little spooklings. And remember, I'll be watching you.